All set.
Awesome. Would you mind please taking roll, Angela?
Absolutely. Chairwoman Susan Anderbar,
That's me. I'm here.
Vice Chair Julian Drix,
Here, thank you.
Catherine Van Amberg
It's absent.
is absent. Priscilla De La Cruz,
Here.
Carlos Garcia Chiano is absent. Jesus Holgen is absent. Amelia Ross,
Here.
Sadik Kumba is absent. We have 4 present and 4 absent.
Okay, thank you. And I think others will join, but let's get started now. And it's also a beautiful day, so maybe we lost people to life. It looks like the first thing on the agenda is any updates from the Environment Council of Rhode Island. No pressure, Priscilla, but if you have any updates you'd like to share, holding the space.
No specific updates. I should mention that we are pretty close to wrapping up our advocacy work for this current legislative session. So that should wrap up, I believe, by the end of this week. There's still a few, well, many of our priorities that could be scheduled for consideration and or hearing. But I think where we're at is that some of our key priorities have passed the Senate. And of course, the very big one was the Act on Climate being signed into law back in April. There's been a lot of progress on transportation, renewable energy, and several other environmental bills on the Senate side, but not quite sure if they'll actually pass on the House side or be voted out of their specific committee that they're in. So all in all, good progress. There's still, of course, a lot of work to do. So I believe the policy committee of ours will convene at some point in August to plan for what if there is a special fall session, which we've been hearing is very likely that our fall session would happen. It's just a matter of which bills would be heard or considered during that session. So that's where we're at. And then the other thing that we've been working on is just our equity-based strategic planning process. So we hired a consultant called Resolve Conservation, and we've been doing a series of workshops that are open to members, non-members, to the public, folks that are just interested in getting a sense of the process and how they could add feedback along the way and also help shape the direction of the council as we try to better integrate equity into our work. So those happen on Wednesdays, 4:30 to 6, and they will go on every Wednesday throughout the summer, I think through mid-August. So if anyone's interested, feel free to reach out to me and I can make sure you get the information and also share a little bit more about what work we're doing within each workshop. Right now, they've been very geared more towards folks that are part of the council for the reason of making sure that there is sharing and learning going on around equity and that there's a better space created to foster partnerships between environmental groups and EJ communities, but all of course are welcome to be a part of that workshop. And I should mention that we're also providing stipends to folks that need stipends to participate in the process. And they can talk to me about that and we'll figure that out along the way. That's all I have for now, and I'm rambling because I didn't have specific updates prepared, but those are the 2 key things that we've been working on.
You rock. Thank you, Priscilla. Does anyone have any questions or anything for Priscilla on the Environment Council of Rhode Island? Cool. They've been doing just like amazing stuff. And I've really enjoyed those workshops on Wednesday nights, Priscilla.
So I have a question. Are there, of the legislative priorities that are still in the hopper, are there any that come to mind that have particular relevance for the city and aligning with our goals and objectives in the climate justice plan?
Yeah, off the top of my head, there's definitely 100% renewable electricity by 2030. That one was voted by the Senate. It's still in House Environment. I haven't seen it posted yet for this week. So if it doesn't get posted, that means it won't move. There's also energy efficiency, and that is the extension of the energy efficiency programs that are ratepayer funded. There is a sub-A version, an updated sub-A version that House Environment is actually, I believe, voting on this very evening or right now around this time. So there's been a lot of advocacy around that bill, just to make sure that whatever's in that bill would not harm our existing energy efficiency programs, and that there's space for more robust engagement around how the programs could be improved. So I think where we stand now, there is support for the updated version of that sub-A. So that's a critical one. And there was already the original version that passed on the Senate. So now it's a matter of that process unfolding by the end of the week. And then another one of our priorities has been PFAS, or forever chemicals, in water and packaging. So on the Senate side, I believe the water bill moved, and on the House side, packaging has moved. So it's a TBD to see how things work out on that. And right now, another one that it's on our legislative agenda, not a priority, but still a bill that the council supports, is the Team Community Act for the enabling the Transportation and Climate Initiative. So that one passed the Senate as well last week, but it has not had a hearing on the House side. So I think we're at a place where we can assume that that won't have a hearing, but hopefully that is a bill that is heard on the House side in September as one of those special items. And then another one is a bill that would prevent waste and incineration, waste facilities that would permit like the burning of plastic. So all the bad things that we don't want to see built or expanded in Rhode Island. What I'm learning is that there is a bill on the House side that would ban any of those facilities being expanded or built in Rhode Island. So yeah, that is one that is still at play, and that's at play on the House side. And then it would be a matter of the Senate moving on the bill that we do support. I do have a list. We have a handout where we list all of our priorities, and then we also have the rest of our legislative agenda items like that, for example, also include the Green Justice Zones bill. So there's many of them on here, but we can share the full list if that's helpful. So yeah, so I guess the short answer would be, yes, there's a lot of bills that tie back to the goals and targets within the Providence Climate Justice Plan.
That's great. No, I appreciate that specificity, and I'm just thinking ahead to, future legislative sessions and how we can kind of use this connection between ECRI and the city and the Climate Justice Plan to make sure there's as much alignment as possible.
Oh, that would be great. I would truly welcome that. And I think earlier on, before I got more involved with the Sustainability Commission, it's so great to be able to call it that, by the way. I think that's the vision that Sue and I had, just sort of more active communication between both the commission and the council. So yeah, I'd be totally excited to do that in a more coordinated effort next year.
Great.
Or I mean, later in the fall. To the next legislative session in the spring.
Thanks, Priscilla. The two others I was thinking of while you were talking, actually, because there's so many still in the hopper, it's an exciting week, is the community remote net metering bill. which would expand the community remote net metering program by a small amount, by like 30 megawatts, but that looks like it's likely to pass. And it got updated between its first introduction and now to carve out a larger portion for low income ratepayers, and also to have a larger percentage have to be sited not in greenfield spaces, but to be sited in like formerly industrial areas and things like that. So that is one. And then also, I know the city has passed, the plastic bag ordinance. There's that's still in the hopper at the state level, but 2 other plastic reduction measures are looking like they're likely to pass. There's one that prevents the release of balloons that get in our waterways and get, pollute our land. And also that would ban plastic straws from being just like handed out, which again is like another kind of like wasteful plastic product that just ends up on the streets or in landfills. So, or, turtle tummies. So those are 3 others that I know are like hopefully going through this week.
Thanks, Sue.
Yeah. Oh, I thought you were like one more, but it was.
Oh, no, I'm crossing my fingers, waiting for the 11th hour here to see what passes.
It's been a really exciting time. The next thing on the agenda, and actually I should have prefaced the beginning of the meeting with this. Sorry, I'm a little bit like frazzled today, but really excited is the first official meeting where we are the Sustainability Commission and not the Environmental Sustainability Task Force. So high fives and, finger, thumbs ups for everyone who worked really hard to get that ordinance passed. And it was signed 2 weeks ago-ish. And it will also, it does a whole bunch of things, which we've already talked about, but I'm really excited about the potential for expanding our membership to include codified seats for the REJC and also youth-led organizations. So I think this is going to be really exciting for this commission in particular. The next item on our list is updates on activities from the Office of Sustainability. And I know there are a lot of them, so I'll just stop talking right now.
I will try to keep it brief. First, I wanted to welcome Joanna Jarvis, who is here with us. She is our intern this summer, so I just want to give her a second to introduce herself.
Sure, thank you. My name is Joanna Jarvis. I use she, her pronouns. I'm interning with the Office of Sustainability this summer, as Leah said. I'm currently a rising junior at Brown, majoring in urban studies. So I'm really excited about this opportunity to work closely with the city to advance sustainability initiatives.
Great. Thank you, Joanna. She is working on a range of projects, one of which is helping Emily, who couldn't be here today, but with the pesticide-free PVD campaign. So just another plug, if you haven't yet taken the pledge, please do, and give us some pictures and testimony. We're going to be starting another push on social media and also supported by some paid advertising using the grant funds we have for that campaign. So hopefully you'll all notice probably mostly online, but hopefully you'll see more signs popping up in people's yards as well with the pesticide-free pledge. And then I wanted to mention, so kind of building on what Sue was saying, we're very excited about the Sustainability Commission and passing that ordinance. And it's already actually been really important for the city. So we last week announced that we are, or is it 2 weeks ago? I can't even tell, but we are intervening in the C3 proposal that is going before the Energy Facility Siting Board. C3 has requested to expand their facility quite significantly without the full review from the Energy Facility Siting Board. And the city has intervened on the basis of one, just that this is something happening in the city, so we have a right to intervene, and also because it is conflicting with our climate goals that are now codified in our code of ordinance. So it's really significant that we have that now on the books. And the hearing for the Energy Facility Siting Board hearing will be on July 1st, I believe, but I need to double check that date actually. But it is coming up in the beginning of July. Also, speaking of codifying our work, we are also going to be before the City Plan Commission tomorrow, continuing our discussion around the updates to the comp plan to again institutionalize the climate justice plan in the comprehensive plan, which is another really important document that guides land use decisions in the city, and any kind of other changes around zoning or land use. It has to be in line with our comp plan. So it's really important that we get that same language about our climate justice goals into the city's comprehensive plan as well. So that meeting is tomorrow evening as well. In addition to, there's also a meeting tomorrow night on Public Street, which is in Upper South Providence, and it's a CRMC, the Coastal Resource Management Council. The city petitioned to make that a public access right-of-way, and this is the public hearing for that decision. So that is also, again, happening tomorrow. The dates and times and how to comment or access these meetings is on our Facebook page, but also you can reach out and I can share that. I wish I could put it in the link in the chat, but we don't have that ability with this setup. So those are a couple really important updates. You know, there's other stuff going on, but those are the key ones at the moment. And then I know the next agenda item is the compost plan, so I'm happy to share that, but wanted to pause for any questions.
Thanks, Leah. And folks on the commission will hopefully remember that I've emailed you separately, BCC'd so it complies with open meetings rules, but about these upcoming hearings. So you should have had all that information in your inbox. And at the last time that these changes to the comprehensive plan were heard by the City Plan Commission, we submitted a letter, and I've sent in like an updated version, just reminding them that we still support this, and we had already voted on it at a prior meeting, and we would really appreciate if they would continue and coordinate it a little bit with Monica at the REJC, Monica and April at the REJC about their ability to send in a letter too. And those of you who I'm friends with on Facebook, I created a post about this earlier today and tagged you. And if we are not friends, I will just friend you at some point, and that way I can tag you in things like this. If anyone has any questions, I just wanted to make sure you guys knew that it was all in your inbox. Yeah.
It is July 1st is the hearing.
July 1st. And is that a meeting, Leah, that people can attend, or is that?
Yep.
Okay.
It's a public hearing Thursday, July 1st at 1 p.m. at 89 Jefferson Boulevard, Warwick, Rhode Island, hearing room A. I'm looking for information. The hearing will be streamed live to the public and archived via the internet. And then there's a link. So this is just information from the Rhode Island Public Utility Commission website.
Okay, cool. I'll check that out.
And you can, yeah, I'm actually not. So the city is intervening, but if you're not an intervener, public comment can be submitted in writing. As well. So those are the options.
It's really exciting that the city's intervening in this.
Yes, absolutely.
And it looks like the Attorney General is also intervening, which is exciting.
Mm-hmm. As is CLF, Conservation Law Foundation.
Oh, great.
All right, well, should I switch gears to compost if there are?
Yeah, that sounds great. And I don't see any members of the public with their hands up. So, oh, and Angela, it looks like Vatic has joined on as a member.
Oh, yeah.
Can you promote him, please?
Absolutely.
Thank you. I just want to recognize Vatic has joined as well. Thank you, Vatic.
All right, so can folks see my screen? Are we in full screen mode? Right. All right, so I'm going to jump right in. So just as a refresher, we are responding to the resolution that the council passed at the very beginning of this year to produce a residential composting plan that explores current composting practices, identify short and long-term steps to eliminate food waste from the residential waste stream, and establishes a set of principles and values to guide the work. So we've been working very closely with Zero Waste Providence on this effort, and a number of others have contributed. Zero Waste Providence was able to hire a part-time person to help on this, and she was able to do research and conduct interviews, and we've also hosted a handful of stakeholder meetings as well as issued a survey. So hopefully many of you have participated one way or another throughout this process. So the report talks about the benefits of compost, and it digs into starting with the dollars. So we did an analysis to understand what would the potential savings be if we diverted all of the possible organic waste from our waste stream. And it is estimated that about 32% of municipal solid waste is organic material that could be composted. This is based on a study that Resource Recovery did a number of years ago, a waste characterization study, and that was statewide. So assuming that Providence is somewhat reflective of the entire state, it's also the best estimate we have of what percentage of our waste stream is organic material. So if we were able to divert all of that waste from our waste stream, we would see savings on order of the blue line and the blue dots going forward. So we looked at historical numbers. And then one of the really important things that reduction does is that it would keep the city under its cap, which is basically a level set by Resource Recovery of how much we're allowed to send to the landfill in a given year. Anything over that has a much higher tipping fee. A tipping fee is the amount we pay per ton to dispose of our waste. So we also looked at if we only were able to divert half of that 32%. So, even if we don't get it all, there's still a really significant opportunity for savings year over year. Going forward, the numbers go up because our tipping fees will go up. We already have tipping fees going forward into 2023, and they are every year they go up. So here is a synopsis of the calculations that we did. So starting with, we looked at fiscal year going back to 2015, what our cap was, our waste cap was in tons, how much we actually generated. Then we looked at how much we were over the cap and compared that to how much could be potentially diverted. So what is 32% of our municipal solid waste generation? So we could calculate the savings based on over the cap and under the cap to see what our total potential savings would be if we were diverting all estimated organics. And as I mentioned, so for the projection years of 2021, 22, and 23, you can see the tipping fees over the cap goes up to $100 per ton in 2023, compared to right now we're at $80. So it's a significant increase, but under the cap, $47. Under the cap remains pretty reasonable. So if we can keep our waste generation under the cap, which we generally don't do, but hopefully with food waste and other organic diversion programs, we could do that. Of course, another great benefit of composting is prolonging the life of the landfill, which also relates to cost. So one of the reasons we're seeing, $100 per ton tipping fees is that's really what you see in our neighboring states that don't have a centralized landfill that's subsidized by the state, or even just controlled by the state, to the extent that it is subsidized. I'm actually not sure, but if we were trying to get rid of this, our waste on this open market, so to speak, without the central landfill, we'd be paying well over $100 a ton. So we anticipate that once the landfill does reach its capacity, tipping fees will continue to really increase. Landfills are also a huge contributor to greenhouse gas emissions. In fact, they're the third largest contributor in the United States. So when we put organic material in the landfill, it creates methane, which is a highly potent greenhouse gas. And so by keeping this material out of the landfill, we would be making really important progress towards our carbon neutral goals. Compost also has really incredible benefits to our ecosystem, especially our soil and our watershed. So as you may know, adding compost to your soil helps plants grow. It limits erosion. It creates a really healthy microbes in the soil. It also helps soil retain water. And it helps by retaining water, it reduces runoff, and it actually can help address stormwater runoff pollution and clean water before it gets into our waterways. It also sequesters carbon. It reduces the need for pesticides and other chemicals, synthetic chemicals in our soils. So very, very important to get these nutrients back into our soils. It also has the opportunity for creating jobs, local jobs in the city. So especially compared relative to landfilling waste, you can create a lot more jobs by composting material. Any questions on the benefits of compost? And I can't see everyone because my screen share, so just holler. All right, so we took a look at what's going on in Providence already in the area of composting, and the industry is absolutely growing locally. We heard that from many of the haulers that are operating, whether they're collecting it curbside from residents or serving businesses or managing community drop-off sites. There is a significant demand and interest in composting. We have a number of sort of community-run drop-off sites or small composting sites throughout the city. And this is actually a really appealing way for folks to participate. 57% of folks who responded to the survey said that they were interested in some sort of aggregate drop-off location to bring their waste to, and 27% would be willing to pay for that service. Of course, backyard composting is an option for many folks in the city too. If you have the space in your yard, 38% of the survey respondents said that they were interested in learning how to compost in their backyard. The city sells discounted compost bins from Resource Recovery, and you can get them directly from Resource Recovery as well. And there's lots of opportunities throughout the city for education around how to compost at home. So this is definitely a really great way to keep that material local. And there's also anaerobic digestion in the state. So there's a facility in Johnston, and while anaerobic digestion doesn't have the same benefits for soil as compost, it's absolutely a good compost option when composting isn't available. Many haulers will bring their organic material to the state's the anaerobic digestion facility in the state when the compost facilities reach their capacity, which happens just every week. So there is certainly a limitation for composting based on just the places that offer large scale composting. So expanding, I'll pause again, actually, and if anyone has any questions or comments.
Question, Leah. You mentioned that for the existing sites that the haulers are often regularly bringing excess compost to the anaerobic digester. So one, the anaerobic digester is online, that's a question. And two, where are all the sites? Like, are there more than just the earth care site? Is the the compost plant site up and running, or are there more sites? I remember for a while, like
I believe
sites
it's just Earth Care Farm.
Okay.
Only large scale site in the state. Haulers will sometimes take it to some other sites in Massachusetts. And yes, I believe the anaerobic digestion facility is online because it was reported from some of the haulers that they bring their material there.
Cool, thank you.
Any other comments or questions? All right. So how do we expand compost? So clearly we heard that the current compost facilities are limited. And so that needs to be addressed. We also heard that while there is growing demand for composting services in the city, there still isn't an incentive for residents or small businesses to participate. So we're going to be up against the barrier of how many people want to do this on essentially a volunteer basis. Either they're paying for it or they're doing it on their own dime one way or another. So that will be, there's still a lot of growth happening, but that's certainly a limitation to that growth. So we started thinking about some goals based on all of this to guide the work and going forward. And the first is we absolutely want to keep material local. So processing should occur as close to the origins of the waste as possible. If it can be done on site, like at home in a backyard, that is absolutely the best option. This reduces the impact of transportation from emissions. It also increases the likelihood that that finished material will go right back into the soils in Providence, and that's what we want. The second goal is to aggregate and coordinate collection. So if on-site or backyard composting is not an option, we should strive to aggregate that collection with community drop-off sites and as the next best option, again, to try to reduce those emissions from transportation and just increase the overall efficiency of the system. Regardless of how it's collected or where it's processed, we want to close the loop and make sure that the finished compost is returned to the soils in Providence as much as possible. We want to design programs that really support local workforce development and align with the goals in the climate justice plan, such as prioritizing frontline communities and democratically owned and operated enterprises. And along those lines, we'll strive to center justice and equity to ensure that any new programs and policies do not disproportionately burden frontline communities. And this means that frontline communities should be a part of the decision-making process every step of the way. And lastly, we would like to prioritize composting over anaerobic digestion so we get those full environmental benefits. But again, anaerobic digestion is a good alternative when composting is not an option, and it's absolutely better than sending it to the landfill. And then moving into the strategies. So from there, we identified 6 near-term strategies and 1 sort of long-term strategy, which is to really have a comprehensive citywide organic diversion program where we can effectively ban organic material from the municipal solid waste stream. To get there, we have work to do. We need to steward more education and outreach for organic recycling, ensuring that people have access to, for those who can have access to backyard composting, know how to do it, are aware of its benefits, and can find the various avenues to compost and to reduce their food waste. We definitely want to expand the organic drop-off sites throughout the city so more and more residents can participate, and subsidize those so they are free for residents to participate as needed. We also know that we need to help advocate for more large-scale composting facilities across the state. We heard this loud and clear from the folks in the compost industry that we talked to. While there's a lot we can do locally in our backyards and on small-scale composting sites in the city, the amount of volume from restaurants and everything that we have going on in Providence, we will need other large-scale composting facilities in the state. And this really comes down to siting issues and NIMBYism, or folks who don't want a compost facility in their community. To that end, we also want to promote as much local composting as possible by creating standards that allow those who are doing this great work in the city to help give them some assurance that they won't be kind of kicked out, so long as they are, have a good facility, and are not attracting pests or anything else that would be disruptive for the neighborhood. And we want to make sure that they have the right to operate here in the city. Number 5 is we want to help create the demand for finished compost by procuring compost for city projects, and also, again, finding all those opportunities we can to get compost into our soils in Providence so we can get all those great benefits. And to that end as well, composting organics from municipal facilities and events. So trying to lead by example and working towards collecting food waste from city buildings as well as events across the city. That is it. So I'm happy to pause for questions or comments. And just by way of process, we've shared this with what we call our stakeholder group, which is a group of folks who work in either advocacy around food waste and zero waste, or people who work in the industry, folks who are haulers or composters in the city. We've gotten some great feedback from them, and are just working on tweaks to the final report. We'll have a draft to share soon, and then we'll get that off to graphics and finalize it.
Thanks, Leah. That was awesome. I know I have a few questions, but I've been talking a lot, so I want to open it up to see if other commission members have questions or comments. Feel free to just come off mute.
Hey, this is Julian. Thank you for that presentation, Leah. One question, as someone who does have a compost pile myself in the yard, and fortunate to have the space for that. I know that there are certain things that are less good to put in the compost. So, things that are kind of meat proteins sometimes, or oils, things like that, that don't make as good quality compost for putting directly into the soil. So I was wondering, in terms of if there were strategies within the plan or conversations around kind of breaking that out a little bit in terms of different types of household waste. And then also thinking about restaurants. Obviously, oils can be on a restaurant scale, can be turned into biodiesel and collected that way. That's a little bit harder at the kind of individual household level if you're collecting oil from frying something and not wanting to just pour it down the drain, obviously, which has its own drawbacks. And
don't
it's not
do
a good thing
that,
to be doing. Yeah, don't do that. But just wondering kind of what to do with those types of things. Is anaerobic digestion the best option for that, or are there things being looked into collection for those types of things?
So I'm glad you brought up the biodiesel. I think that's a great kind of footnote. I mean, this plan really focuses on compost, but I think it's worth mentioning. I know WBNA has a program, or at least they used to have a program where you could, they would recycle cooking oil. You could bring it to a place in the neighborhood and it would get collected. So that's a really cool kind of model for addressing that need. Out at large scale composting facilities can better handle meats and cheese, and there are even some small and medium sized composting facilities in the city as well that can they get hot enough and are managed well enough that they're able to process meats and cheese and oils. So it really depends, and you have to be certainly aware of where you're bringing material. When we talk about the organic drop-off sites, while we want to make them free and open to people, they will also be, you'll have to sign up and you'll have to be taught what can go in them and what can't go in them to be sort of a member of that site and to be a participant with that drop-off site. And some haulers, or whether that some of these sites have haulers and it's taken off site, and others it's composted on site. So depending on the setup, it could accept those things or it might not. But again, all of that will be managed by and determined by the folks who are managing those sites on an individual basis. That answer your question?
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, so thank you for the information and for the presentation. I guess the only thought slash question I'm still thinking about is to strategy number 3 when it comes to advocating for additional large scale composting facilities across the state. Like, what would be sort of your recommendation or thoughts for going about doing that? Like, is it a matter of course, like there's the demand side of things, attracting those large scale facilities, but are there incentives that have to be built into like state law or certain things to attract those kind of large scale composting? And
Yeah,
you did mention siting as well.
My understanding is, and so one, I would say in developing any sort of programs, absolutely the folks like Earth Care Farm, haulers, other people who have tried to site I know Compost Plan has tried a number of times to get a large scale composting facility off the ground. So those folks definitely need to be part of that process. And I'm sure they have a lot of great insights to share. From what I've heard, there's certainly capital costs that are barriers at the onset. And then it comes down to mostly NIMBYism. So a site, they might start and then they get a complaint from a neighbor or someone who doesn't really understand composting and what's happening, but they're concerned about potential smells or what have you, which, as I'm sure many of you know, if you have a functioning compost facility, those are not issues. But nonetheless, there's a stigma around it, and they get their ability to operate taken away by the city or town. So in terms of how you alleviate that, perhaps some incentives to help with these upfront costs, but I think maybe standardize zoning or an effort to I think it needs to be a concerted effort to communities to say, like, these are good, important land uses that we want in our community, and how do we encourage them?
Thank you. And then the other sort of follow-up thought to that is maybe that's an area where ECRI could also work more closely with your office and figure out what levers we have at the state level and what we could push for.
Yeah. I even think just like model zoning, right? It doesn't have to be like a top-down state thing, like working community by community to make it easier for these facilities to be sited. That might be a better approach than and top-down.
Gotcha, that makes sense. So then really what happens across communities and statewide is the education part of talking about the reality of having the facilities in communities. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
A quick note, I do see their hands raised in the public, and our process is generally that commission members ask questions and comments first, but I see your hands and I see them in order, and we'll totally get to you. So I just want to say that out loud. Other commission members with questions or comments?
Sure. The commission, huh?
Yeah.
Hey, everybody. I know we're not a task force anymore. So yeah, Leah, thank you so much for sharing the information. I came in halfway through, so I'm not sure if I got everything, but I wanted to ask, like, I know that with some of the composting, like, procedures and some of the different haulers, like, they give you like a bucket that you get. Would this process be the same? Would the city be providing like buckets for people? And that's one part of the question. And then the other part is, how have you all thought about people who don't have vehicles to transport to the different sites? Are there ways that people can participate if they don't have vehicles? Like, I don't necessarily see Uncle Ripta letting people on the bus with that, but have people thought about that, or are there incentives for people who don't have cars to do those type of things? I know that was one of the barriers, was incentives. So yeah, I wasn't sure if y'all thought about those things.
Yeah, so so with the bucket, at this point, I don't think, at the very beginning at least, I think we're gonna really try to encourage as much backyard composting and bringing it to drop-off sites as possible, and continue to let, you know, the companies who are doing that collection with the bucket keep doing their thing. And at some point, you know, once we start to like see some savings from the diversion, hopefully we can help make that accessible to everyone. But kind of just starting with the stuff that can be done very, very locally is certainly a priority, just in terms of like keeping this material local, reducing the need for, you know, what we don't want is another truck going around up and down every street once a week, collecting food scraps that are contaminated because people are not really interested in doing this and they're just doing it because they have to do it. We don't want the recycling problem that we have right now. The drop-off sites, would love to see them within walking distance, and or in places where you're going anyways. So like Urban Greens has compost now, or an organic drop-off site with, you can collect compost, finished compost as well. So we're hoping to grow these sites in places that are walkable, bikeable, convenient for folks in the neighborhood, in the community. So there's a place that everyone can walk to accessibly to bring their food scraps.
Any other questions? Okay, I know I have one, so I'll just ask it now before we go to the public. I guess I have two questions, one that are sort of related. So for the drop-off sites, who are you envisioning like managing those sites? And then also, just in general, these are really awesome strategies. And I'm wondering like where you're envisioning like this work and like the next steps on the strategies living. Is this something that your office will continue to push on? It seems like it involves like a lot of outside stakeholders to push on it too. Just kind of like, where do you envision the work living?
Yeah. So in terms of, sorry, your first question was again?
Yeah, sorry. It's who's going to manage the drop-off sites?
Who's going to manage drop-offs, right? So right now we are working with Zero Waste Providence, and they already have a few of these sites up and running. We did get a small grant to help provide better signage and better infrastructure at these sites, and trying to expand those. So adding a couple more sites, and they have some really exciting potential locations in the pipeline. So excited to see that. Already sort of moving forward. So this also gets to your kind of next question, but who's managing the site? So Zero Waste Providence will work to find haulers for these sites, or site managers. So it could be Harvest Cycle or Bootstrap or whomever is already kind of doing this work. And they would be the ones managing the site, getting folks to sign up. And we want to use some of the very little grant funding that we have for this to offset the cost for those who need, so we can offer a sliding scale cost, or a sliding scale kind of price, so more and more people can participate without a barrier of cost. So next steps, definitely looking for funding to further kind of subsidize this work. I would love people's ideas. I was thinking about if we could like apply for a grant for a composting cohort. So you have new people who are composting, who go through training together and kind of can troubleshoot. They get all the materials for free. They can start composting in their backyard with support from each other and from, you know, a composting expert. So things like that. Again, we really want to make sure it's accessible. We know the demand's out there. So just expand who has the ability to participate in this effort.
Cool, thanks, Leah. Any other questions or comments from the commission? Cool, then I will turn to the members of the public, but feel free to jump at any point. I'm gonna go in order of when I saw the hands go up. So can we take Katie Murphy off mute, please? Or invite her up as whatever it is to bring her so she can talk. And as she's coming on, I should acknowledge that she was a big part, I believe, of drafting this work and is, yeah. Yay, Katie, welcome.
I just had a number of comments just to kind of add on to some of the answers that Leah was giving. There was a question about sites, large scale compost sites in the state. There actually are a few more. Rhode Island Nurseries is operating a compost site. It's actually temporarily paused at the moment, but there is a compost site that is taking food scraps and will be back online at some point this year at Rhode Island Nurseries.
Is that in North Smithfield? Sorry.
It's not. That's actually, I'm going to get to that one as well. But it's in the southern end of the state. I don't know exactly where it is. It's near Newport. So it's not necessarily the best option. There's definitely places in Massachusetts that would be closer than Rhode Island Nurseries to Providence. North Smithfield, Brittany Kazult is operating American Organics up there. They're accepting food scraps. And those are, so I don't know completely like what their capacity is at the moment, but definitely larger scale than anything that's happening in the city. There's also, a lot of smaller scale processing sites in the city. There's, I know, 4 that are operational at the moment, sort of like licensed compost sites. So I also wanted to mention the idea that with these drop-off sites in the city, someone brought up the idea of recycling oil for biodiesel. These sites could potentially become these sort of all-around zero waste depot kind of places. There's once people are coming to a centralized location to drop off their compost, why not to start to think about, electronics recycling or plastic bag recycling or, potentially collecting biodiesel or something like that. I'm a member of Zero Waste Providence, and I was on the phone call with Ainsley, the person who wrote the report, when she was interviewing someone from Cambridge who, had recently came to the city of Cambridge, rolled out a similar program over the past 5 years or so. And one of the things that Cambridge did is invested in rolling buckets that have wheels on them and a handle that extends kind of like a suitcase, making it easier for older people to walk with the bucket. So if these compost drop-off sites were relatively walkable, within a walkable distance of, every single person's home. And, there was the option of either getting for free or purchasing at a subsidized rate, these sort of rolly bins. I think that would really help with accessibility. As Leah mentioned, I think zoning will go a long way towards encouraging the development of new compost sites. In addition to, whatever means we have available of incentivizing, the availability of capital for new sites, I think that's a huge stumbling block. And lastly, I think one of the issues with the sites getting shut down is that the DEM existing policy for troubleshooting when there's a complaint about a site has not been followed, and that policy is actually great. There's a really good process for trying to figure out what's wrong with the site, allowing the site to have a certain amount of time to fix it, getting inspected by a DEM inspector, and it really works well for both the site and also the public to make sure that it comes into compliance instead of immediately getting shut down. The problem is that in several cases in Rhode Island, the municipality has just completely overridden that policy. So I think, a fast and easy way to deal with this is, at least in Providence, trying to figure out how to enshrine that DEM troubleshooting policy so that it just doesn't get completely bulldozed. Great. Okay, that was all my notes.
Yeah, you're amazing, Katie. Can I ask you 2 more questions while we have you? Sure. One is you mentioned the zoning as well, and Leah did. Are there good model zoning ordinances from other places that we could adapt to, like the Rhode Island landscape, like to Providence or to other municipalities to help with
Really good
sightings with these?
question. And I think the place to look for that would be Institute for Local Self-Reliance. Has a lot of, they have a policy playbook online that talks about, good policies from all over the country. And if that exists, it would be on there.
Okay, cool. I'll check that out. And then the other question I had was Leah had a great idea around like cohorts, but I'm wondering if for backyard composters, if this is something that's being encouraged, is there a place where folks can go if they're like, they have questions? Like, is there like a good resource that you'd, I'm a backyard composter and I just like ask people I know who know more things than I do.
I mean, there's certainly a lot of great resources online, especially like Institute for Local Self-Reliance has a lot of great resources. The trouble is just getting people to, connecting people with them. I think if there were some sort of a physical place in Providence that people knew of as a place that they could go to get education on backyard composting, and that they could come to pick up their bin and there would be an expert there who could talk to them and help them troubleshoot what's going on. I think that would be really helpful. Or, even just like a page. I mean, there is a page on the Sustainability Office website about backyard composting, but just making sure everybody knows about that. The other issue is, I think, like two major issues I've run into talking to people with backyard composting is the resource recovery bins don't have mesh on the bottom, which is they're just really not rat proof. And so I don't know what it would take to get a new design of bin or to have some kind of workshop where people could, build a bin from a kit, or if that's like relatively inexpensive or something like that. Or if the city was able to, maybe order a certain amount of slightly differently designed bins to resell. And then the other issue is people just being able to get access to the materials they need, like the proper amounts of carbon. Like you need leaves and wood chips really to process alongside food scraps, and being able to have enough of that and how to get it to your house. And maybe being able to have some kind of depot where people know they can come to pick up leaves and wood chips for free or something.
Cool. Thanks, Katie. And if folks ever want to laugh really hard, / if you have one of the city bins, I have a lot of extra chicken wire from when the rats broke into mine and I had to kind of rat proof it. And it was a battle. The bin almost won, but we rat proofed it in the end.
It's really, really hard.
I like got this chicken wire. It was like a whole thing. I got cut like 5 times. It was like really embarrassing.
Also like not the easiest thing to just tell members of the public, oh, just put chicken wire on it. It's actually much more complicated than you would think.
Yeah, it was more complicated than like I was imagining it was going to be. Also because I've been already composting in it. So, but it's totally doable. I am not at all handy, so I don't want to discourage anyone. It was totally doable. I have extra chicken wire if anyone wants it. I'm happy to give that away. But
I think we should absolutely have some instructions on best practices with those existing bins for the time being, what materials to use, how to do it on our website. And if Katie or anyone else has other suggestions of designs for compost bins that we could, if we do get some funding, we could use those for a cohort or just we're getting those out into the community instead for a little bit, make it easier for folks.
One thing we've been working on at Groundwork is developing a cheaper version of the compost Knox bin, which is kind of like the most classic 3-bin system that is, the most reliable that people will build. And the plans are free online to build them, but they're pretty expensive and they require a lot of like really particular materials, and they're a little bit overbuilt. So we've been working on kind of trying to create a new design that's like a pared down version of that.
I wonder if, and this is just like me talking, but if there's some good partnerships with like RISD or like RISD students to work on like better. I mean, I wonder if there could even be like a design competition or, something fun with like some of these design minded students who like might really like having a very practical application for some of the work that they do. And that could then be,
it's a perfect design challenge because there are like so many different independent variables that you have to match up.
Yeah. And then like managing like cheap materials and things like that. And I remember my challenge was like getting my compost bin home because I drive a Civic and it did not fit in my car. So it was like this funny, like, oh my God, I finally bought the thing and I can't get it to my house. So just things like that. Anyway, I'm going to stop talking. I get so excited about compost. We have 2 other members of the public with their hands up. Maybe we can keep Katie because you're such an expert, but promote Linda Perry for her question or comment.
She is all set.
Awesome. Linda, you're with us. You just have to unmute yourself.
I am
Yep. We can hear you.
officially unmuted. Thank you. Because you're talking about compost, I have a couple of comments in compost. I had noticed and researched a facility on the corner of Eddy Street and Ernest in an empty abandoned site. Excuse me, a site has an L-shaped building and it's parallel to the railroad tracks on Eddy. And I ran it by Dave Everett and I ran it by Amelia at one time. And I think I even sent it to Leah and you. This was like about 1.5 years ago. It's a large site that's not used. And it could be a compost site in Providence and also like a bottle drop-off. I know that the Senate is working on a bottle deposit thing. It's a lot of people that will take their bottles to make and also be incentivized to drop off their compost bin with the suitcase, because they could, really kind of keep it clandestine looking. They doesn't have to say compost on it. They could probably take it on a bus and not be penalized for that if it doesn't stink. But the bottle thing, the bottle depot, we should have a giant bottle depot with somebody working there and handing out the money for the nips, the Coca-Cola cans, the bottles, everything, all that stuff, which ends up in the landfill anyway. We think we're recycling, we're not really, which ends up in the landfill, which reduces the tipping fee in the long term and the fees to Providence. So that, and if every dollar store or Dollar General had a hand in your compost facility, like handing in a propane tank, you trade it in, that would, everybody would be able to get to it. That's just a thought, because it's in the city. And in the urban city, there's not a lot of spaces for it, but this is on Eddy Street and it's industrial land. And it's, I think, worth looking at. It's big enough. It's big enough. And what else? The high heat incineration issue, which is going in the House and the Senate, that's a real scary situation. And we have a incinerator right here on Allens Avenue. It's called Stericycle, and it has expanded greatly. And it's owned by the same guy that wants to put the place in Warwick, the medical waste incinerator. So I think we need to be super proactive and lobby hardy against that. I know that Councilman Espinal had put through a resolution and it passed that you can't have something that's, a certain heat register in the city of Providence, but the whole statewide thing would be good. And I don't want to see Stericycle burning more medical waste. Living here for many, many years, I've seen this place blow up. And while they're looking forward to this facility in Warwick, meantime, they're expanding on Allens Avenue. Coincidentally, no, because he's going to be his own customer there if it gets in. And for the first time ever, I saw a liquid tanker truck that said Stericycle. And the new name is called Clean Earth, if that's not a joke, So a liquid tanker truck of medical waste coming through our neighborhoods and our highways, and, it's just horrifying. And also, I just got a call from somebody while I was on. Is it possible that you guys could think about passing a resolution that would, or contemplate no toxic explosive materials going through neighborhoods, because the C3 rail expansion wants to go through neighborhoods in Cranston and Providence, and which would be a new thing. If that's not an expansion, I don't know what is. That would be a new development, that this kind of stuff going by rail, which is ultimately very dangerous, going into and through neighborhoods. So could we have maybe the Rhode Island Environmental Justice League or ECRI to think about that, because it's not fair to everybody that lives along that rail line for these 200 plus bullets tankers that would be servicing that new facility if it goes in, which we're hoping it doesn't.
Awesome.
And
Thanks.
anyway,
I was going to say thanks, Linda. And Leah gave us a heads up earlier that the city is intervening in that C3 hearing.
yes, I know. The city, yeah, you have to be a lawyer, legal to do that. We all wrote letters. Hundreds and hundreds of people wrote letters. And also there is a old gas station, which was propane or natural gas on Allen's Avenue. It was like the trolleys used to fill up there. It says powered by natural gas. It's defunct now. It's not functioning. And I was talking to Chris Waterston of Waterston Marine. He had this great idea. Let's make it an electric charging station. I thought that was a great idea. Does the city have electric cars? It's owned by National Grid. It could be an electric charging station, sets an example for us. And down the road, if we could get it together, the Thurbers and Allen's Avenue site could be a community solar facility, and it could charge that and charge like hundreds of houses in Washington Park. Just a thought, I haven't given up on that. And as I run that by other people, like other organizations, they all think it's a great idea. It's just, and even John McCauley from Green Energy had approached the owner, and the owner said, well, the land's not for sale, but talk to me, everything's for sale for the right price. So, and what I can say is, if not now, when? Leah, you're holding back laughter, but I'm pretty vocal about what's going on in my neighborhood, Allen's Avenue, which is a bomb waiting to go off, and it's only getting worse. Sims Metal expanded down the road. Another 200 trucks a day. They put in a waste station. Trucks going from here to there, more trucks, salt trucks, metal trucks, Stericycle trucks. It's actually, I'm going to say it's a runaway train. You think it's getting better. All the work we're doing is just, it's like beach erosion. You can't stop it. And I'm begging people to act. I know you guys act, but
no,
I live in the action. And
thank you, Linda. I was not laughing. I'm appreciating your knowledge and enthusiasm.
Oh, thank you.
On these issues.
Yeah, I know. I intimately know what's going on here. I intimately know. And the latest thing, and I'm saying it now because you guys all should hear it, is the on Aldrich Street, which is the roadway from Eddy that's going to go right into our beautiful new Roger Williams Park Visitor Center. Aldrich Street, by Eddy Street, they're putting up a 6-story self-storage facility. Behind that very narrow lot from Aldrich Street to the highway is the railroad tracks that C3 and all the port material goes in and out of. There's a retaining wall that is collapsing, and I've notified everybody in the city and state, and Chris Waterston is taking drone footage of it. He's contacting the railroad company because the city says it's the railroad's wall. The railroad says it belongs to the city, and I don't want to wait for a really bad disaster to happen if we have a major rain event. In 2 years since that was approved by City Plan Commission, that wall has further fallen, and now they have a bulldozer there that this guy thinks he's going to start setting piles, for the 6-story storage facility. And I feel as if it is a desperate situation, it's not, I can't wait any longer. So I notified the AG because I feel that, I don't want to get caught in the runaround, kick the can down the curb. It's not my land, it's yours. It's not mine, it's yours, that kind of thing. So whatever
much,
you,
Linda. No, thank you. Thank you for bringing all this up. This is really important. And it kind of gets to, thank you, kind of gets to our next agenda item, which we'll get to in just a second. I know we have one more member of the public who wants to talk about compost, but the potential tour of the port by the sustainability.
oh yeah, we want to have a boat tour. We want to have a boat tour. Okay, but maybe let somebody else talk about
Yeah,
that.
let's let Michael talk about the compost
Thank you.
facility. And thank you so much, Linda. Angela, would you mind promoting Michael to share his public comment on the compost? And this is about the compost plan that was just presented by Leah, is what this.
Is all set.
Great, thank you, Angela. And Michael,
You're
welcome to the meeting and for public comment, particularly on the plan that Leah just presented.
Right. Thank you, Sue. Thank you, Leah, and everyone else on the commission. I just wanted to introduce myself. My name is Michael Bradley, and I've been running a comprehensive drop-off program since 2013, and that is in continuous operation. We accept all types of food scraps, including meat, cheese, bread, dairy, and oils. We also have had an oil drop-off as well. So we've run a comprehensive community drop-off location for almost a decade. And we've also had satellite locations as well. So this isn't just an idea. This exists and has been run expertly and successfully and in compliance of regulations, which is all really important to create buy-in from the community, as well as to ensure that you're creating the best product for both the consumers that would be using the material and to ensure that the programs run in perpetuity. These will have to be established to be sustainable and expected to run long into the future, and shouldn't be considered a fad or a temporary way station towards something larger. I think the idea of composting as close to the source and within the neighborhood really maximizes the value to that community. It also ensures your best effort in trying to create equity and ensure there's equal access to these facilities. And so I am actually a founding member of the Zero Waste Providence Compost Group. I had started it and set the charter in motion that has led to a lot of the initiatives that are happening today. And so some of the things that we brought there was both the proof of concept and the establishment of compost depots, as well as the establishment of compost facilities. So I wanted to mention an important point is in discussing the development of compost facilities, that the power isn't in creating the largest facilities that you can throughout the state. The power is in diffusion of the capabilities of composting to be spread throughout the community. I just want to remind you that all the resources for composting are created locally and can be utilized locally using local resources. That's different than recycling plastic or recycling metal, which must be sent off to large facilities like smelters and reprocessors in order to be turned into new products. There's nothing about that with composting. Composting is a local concern. It always has been. And the only reason why it's been moved to larger facilities is through historical restrictions on where composting could happen. The regulations that were created relaxed and actually opened up the ability and possibilities of small scale and medium scale composting to happen within the city and within other parts of the state. So there's much more flexibility at that medium scale compost in order to satisfy the need of creating a network of comprehensive composting locations that will be in close proximity for area residents. A couple of things I want to just remind you is that we also have designs for the same type of bin that you were discussing, that you would like to see both backyard composters and smaller scale composters utilize, that would be rat proof and would be the right type of composter to use in an urban setting. So as well as the ones that are sold through resource recovery, those can be retrofitted very easy. And so we've had a local resource for backyard composters to come in and learn from us. And that's a very important aspect, because one of our early identified problems was that backyard composters often will start in their composting and be very enthused about it, and within a matter of 6 months to a year, over half of them stop composting. So it's really important that we both provide the resources at the community scale, and we also provide it in a way in which it's equitable. So I'll stop there. I could keep talking, but you've discussed this quite a bit, and I'm sure you want to get on to other subjects. So thank you for your time.
Thank you, Michael. Really appreciate it. I don't see any other members of the public with their hands up. Do any other commission members have comments or questions for Leah or her team about the compost presentation?
I did just, in the meantime, I wanted to just remind folks, and I'll just share my screen real quick, that we have a great website with lots of, can you see it?
Yeah.
With lots of information about compost, resources for composting in your backyard. If you want to do an indoor worm bin, we have the map of where the locations are and who is managing them. So, as well as a list of businesses who are composting. So lots of good information here to check out too.
Thanks, Leah. I feel like I should also clarify, because I made a few jokes about hurting myself in my compost bin, that it's actually, I've had a really easy go of it, like backyard composting, and it is kind of magical. Like, even if mine is probably not the highest quality, I would definitely buy yours from Earth Care Farm, but like, even if you leave it for a little while, like, you just come back and you're like, holy moly, this is like dirt now. And like, look at these crazy creepy crawlers that like appeared in my, just crazy quantities of creepy crawlers that I didn't add there myself. So it's just been this amazing, it's very, I don't know, I get very excited about it. Just like the magic of putting my trash out there and it turns into something magical. So just wanted to add that. It's shockingly easy. Okay, cool. I know we have like 2 minutes left in the time people have allotted here. Want to just bring up at least one more thing, which is I emailed commission members, again, BCC, to avoid any open meetings rules violations. But when we were at the signing of the sustainability ordinance a few weeks ago, which was really exciting, chatted with Monica from the REJC a little bit and the People's Port Authority. And she suggested, it's been a while since we had Julian's really fantastic presentation about the port. I think that was pre-pandemic, so it's like at least a year and a half ago, but I'm pretty sure it was closer to 2 years. And she suggested that she would be really excited to do a tour with us of the port. It could either be walking, or if we wanted to go by bus, that there would be a charge. And I told her we don't have a formal budget for the commission, but if we wanted to do a walking tour, she's open to that. She had also been talking with Councilwoman Helen Anthony from Ward 2, who was interested in as well. And Monica asked if I could check in with other city council members to see if they were interested. And there's about 5 or 6 who said that they would love to join us for that tour. And so wanted to check in with this group to see if there was interest in going on that tour. I would talk with Tina and Angela to make sure we don't violate any open meetings rules by meeting at the port. We will work that out outside of this meeting. But just wanted to raise that as a question, and then see if there was interest, and if so, if folks could follow up with me about like some potential general times and dates that could work, and I'll get to work scheduling that if there's interest. So I'll stop talking, but I was really excited about it. I think I'm going to try and do it anyway. Even if you guys say you're not excited, which I suspect you will, say that you're excited, but I'll stop talking. Obviously, Office of Sustainability, you'd be welcome to join us as well. But yeah, wanted to see what folks were thinking about that.
I'll start. Yeah, I'm definitely excited. I can't forget which year I joined a tour with the Conservation Law Foundation. And it was so awesome to just hear all the knowledge that Julian has and to just tie that knowledge back to like physical things in the port. So I would love to do it again. And I grew up in the area, but again, like just having the perspective of like tying in the health, the science-based stuff, and then the physical stuff. And I think if we can get other folks also who are interested in going, I think that would be great. So it's great to hear that city councilors are also interested.
Awesome. Anyone else interested or want to tell me to not move forward?
Sounds good to me.
Thanks.
And I should add, in terms of timing, from my end, if don't schedule around me, of course, although I'm interested, it would be going into August, like after July 26th.
Cool.
This is Julian. I'm always happy to do something around the port, and really excited that Monica's interested in leading a tour. So definitely supportive of it. And I think it's a great idea to do it with city council members, maybe inviting members of the CPC as well in terms of comprehensive plan, and thinking about other kind of key decision makers who could be educated on what's there would be great. But again, of course, understanding open meeting laws and making sure that we're not having discussion points or meetings or that kind of things, or kind of if we have to cap the number of people, I want to make sure that we're not running afoul of that. But I think the more people we can have on it, the better. In terms of walking versus other driving, getting a bus or something like that, it is a pretty large area. So if it's a walking tour, it would have to be kind of focused on a specific section. Whereas a driving tour, especially if it has stops, we can get out and walk around. You can see more kind of comprehensively everything that's there. I know one time in the past we did a small group with kind of the electric bikes and scooters, and we're able to get more that way. But there's accessibility barriers. Not everyone can do that as well. So just wanted to put that out there.
Thanks, Julian. Okay, cool. So it does sound like there's interest. Why don't I do this? Why don't I follow up? Because I want to also be mindful of people's different abilities and that they might not want to share them out loud. So why don't I put together a little like survey of like people's interest, and then if they would prefer walking versus other modes. The bus tour, there would be some sort of fee, and so we could discuss whether or not some of us would be willing to chip in for that. And then I'll do the same with the city council members who expressed interest in joining as well. And Councilwoman Miller offered to help me kind of wrangle them and make sure that we weren't running afoul of any open meetings rules. So grateful to her for that. And I will follow up with you guys via email where you were BCC'd to avoid any open meetings rules violations. So we're not having an outside meeting. But I'll follow up. I'll make like a little survey or something. Let me make a note so I remember. But that way, if you're like, no, down to walk, I can see that information. But if you're like, hey, actually, I can't walk more than, X amount of feet, I'd prefer if there was biking or a bus. It would just be great to have that information. Okay. And then knowing we're running over, just saying the last agenda item we'll go through because we already had time for public comment a little bit is if there are any updates on from around the table for commission members of things coming up. I forget how exactly I worded it in the agenda, but if there are things coming up that you want to bring to the commission just to our attention or for future agenda items. And the one future agenda I know I've been working on that we got a request from the public on was to have a conversation about community gardens, and that pairs really well with the compost conversation we just had. This is a really busy time for community gardens, as you can imagine. So we couldn't get it together to have that for today, which actually worked out really well because there were so many other things. But that'll probably be either next month or August. But anyway, I'll stop talking. Any updates are on the table, please just come off mute. Cool. Guess there aren't a ton of updates, which is also great. Okay, that is also great. I'm trying to leave enough time for someone to jump in case they're going to, but not have too awkward of a long silence. Okay, I'm shaking his head. I want to make sure people I couldn't see too were like not just like trying to get at their mute buttons. Awesome. Well, I think unless there are any more members of the public with their hand raised, which there are not, we can adjourn. And I learned recently we don't need a motion to adjourn, but I love how Jesus gives us a motion. So if everyone wants to do their own little motion in their seats, we can then adjourn. And thank you so much, Angela, for sticking with us.
Thank you, guys. Have a safe one. Enjoy the rest of the day.
Stay cool, guys.
Thank you.